Hey guys, welcome back to the Friday Society. I am here with Hannah Siddiqui. She is the founder of Road to Hannah. She has been featured in Huffington Post. She's spoken at the TEDx conference on the future of wellness, and she's building one of the coolest astrology businesses that honestly I feel like is on the internet right now. I follow you constantly. I am obsessed and I just love how tangible you make everything. So I am super excited to get into this one today and welcome to the show.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much for having me, and what an introduction. That was so beautiful, and my heart is melting.
I'm super excited. Okay, so first things first, in doing some research, I learned
Yeah.
that you're a second generation astrologer.
hmm
So I normally get started by asking people like where their journey began, but it feels like yours was pretty clear from the beginning. So, what did that
Yeah.
look like growing up in a home where astrology was already an accepted life path?
You know, it's so interesting because I didn't really find my spiritual path until I was about 17, almost 18. And then I didn't really get into astrology much until I was about 19. So for me, growing up, astrology was one of those things that I loved and I had a connection to, both just from my own personal interest and the familial connection as well. But it wasn't something that was actually a huge part of my life. It wasn't until it was actually my 19th birthday, I was gifted a natal chart reading by a local astrologer from my mom, who is an astrologer as well. And she and I kind of came into the practice just a few years apart. But as we were kind of going through, and I went to this reading and learned so much about my chart and had just such a profound experience, we were kind of doing some digging in our family history and looked back on my mom's side and realized that we had generations upon generations of tarot readers and palm readers and astrologers going back into my family, but they were all men. So it was really interesting to see the shift then of my mom being an astrologer and then me picking up, the gift that sounds weird to say in relation to
Oh, I
myself,
get it.
but picking up that kind of familial astrology gift. And as a first generation Indian American as well, it was a way of like connecting to my culture. So
Mm.
it was this very profound experience. And I know it doesn't quite answer the question of what was it like growing up, but I think what astrology did for me coming into it, into my late teens, going into my early 20s, is it brought me this cultural connection and this familial connection that I had been missing and searching for my entire life.
Hmm. I love that so much. Now, okay, I I definitely feature a lot of like business builders on the
Mm-hmm.
show. And I think something that's really interesting to me, and I 100% believe like manifestation is a totally real thing. Like there are just
Yeah.
too many instances in my life that I was like, oh, wow, like I had this exact picture, so
Mm-hmm.
many years ago. Like, how did this happen? So I kind of want to get into tying like manifestation, like the quote unquote woo woo, right? In the
Mm-hmm.
spiritual aspect into business building.
Yeah.
And something that I actually was really struck by recently was you posted a reel, it might even be your most recent one, but on how
Mm-hmm.
you had made your best month ever
Yeah.
using the principles of manifestation and
Mm-hmm.
mindset. So, can you go into that a little bit and sort of just elaborate on that reel?
Yeah, absolutely. So, growing up, being a first generation Indian American, my parents pushed me really hard in school. So, I was a kid who had to always be achieving. Always had to be at the top of my class. I was a dancer and I had to be, winning the competitions and doing the best that I could. Like, not achieving was not an option for me, both with how I was raised and also what I came to develop, or the own standards I came to develop for myself. And so I would constantly push myself and hustle and work so hard to do the best and be the best at everything I could. But it got to the point where if I fell short, it was like soul crushing. If I didn't hit that goal, it would break me. And it was around that age of 17, 18 when I was getting into spirituality that enough was enough. I was dealing with horrible anxiety. I was depressed. I was so upset, and I didn't have a good relationship with myself because the only relationship I had with myself was I need to basically operate like a machine and do the best that I can. And so when manifestation came onto my radar, it was a complete 180 from what I knew. It was the system of faith, the system of belief, of letting go, and not just trying to achieve things through brute force. And there was a part of me that was absolutely terrified because it went against the grain of what I knew. And then there was the part of me that was like, but this sounds really interesting. And what would happen if we played with this and tried this new way of doing things? And I'm so, so glad I had that ability to say, let's just see what could happen, because it truly did make the space for so many things that were beyond, my wildest dreams to come into fruition, but also beyond what I thought was possible for me. And furthermore, what was beyond the capability of me to achieve through just that brute force action. So, whether that was manifesting my partner who was just absolutely incredible in every way, to that reel that I shared, I think it was actually yesterday, about manifesting my highest income month so far. The principles of manifestation have shown me that, one, my hard work will be rewarded, but my hard work and my ability to take action will be rewarded when I allow the space to kind of revel in the magic that I've created through that work. And when I trust and build that faith, then that sets the motion for those things to come in. I don't have to burn myself out to be successful. And I think that's a theme that we see so much, especially in like the entrepreneurship world and the business world right now, is this theme of stepping back from the burnout. And I really think that's where manifestation met me at the right time in my journey.
Wow, that's amazing. I think it's so important that you're saying like where it meets you.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that I think there's the belief of like hustle culture, work
Mm-hmm.
really hard, get everything you want.
Yeah.
And then I do think occasionally certain people on the internet, whatever on social can make manifestation seem like, oh, just sit
Mm-hmm.
back and sit on the couch and like
Yeah.
everything will happen.
Yeah.
And it's like that's where I'm like, okay, wait, we have on the one hand, we have like hustle, hustle, hustle. And then on the other hand, we have like, okay, just sit there and wait. And I
Mm-hmm.
I love that your approach sort of brings in like, no, 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 you still need to take action, but
Yeah.
you're just not burning yourself out completely. So can you go into like what letting go of hustle culture, but still taking aligned action, like what that could look like for people?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you bring this up because my favorite line when talking about manifestation is, you can't just sit on your couch and eat potato chips all day and hope $1 million comes to you. That's not how it works. I think where that kind of middle ground lies is in this idea of aligned action. And it's funny because I feel like the word alignment is becoming a big buzzword these days. But aligned action is essentially taking action that you feel really excited about and inspired to take, and that pushes you in the next step towards achieving that thing. So, for example, one of the easiest things that I found for people to manifest is like a parking spot. So, say you want to find a parking spot right in front of your destination that's like the meter's already paid and it's already good to go. Your aligned action is getting in the car and driving your car to that place because you want to go there. It's inspired and it's aligned because you already want to go to that space, and then it creates the ability to have that parking spot show up. If you don't drive your car, you're never going to know that that parking spot is open for you. And so it's the same with anything that you're desiring. If you're trying to manifest a partner and you want to find that love into your life, well, aligned action could be going to places when you feel inspired to go to them, where you may meet people, like working at a cafe, or if that's a dating app and that feels good to you, taking that action. It's doing things from a place of, I'm doing this because it feels good and I know it's going to move the needle however amount, versus I'm doing this because I feel like I have to and I should to and I think it's right. It's getting out of that mind and getting into your body and saying, what feels like the next step for me, and how can I get excited about it?
Yeah, I love that. And I was listening to I love to listen to audiobooks when I read
Mm-hmm.
and I or when I drive. And I just found it's called The Illusion of Money.
Ooh.
It is so good. So it's
Yeah.
fun fact. if anybody listening, if you guys watched 10 Things I Hate About You, which I think everyone has,
Love that movie.
it's written by the character of what's his name? Bogey Lowenstein, who
Oh my
has like the
gosh.
big party. This
Yeah.
guy, whoever this actor is like a huge manifestation person. And he's
Oh,
written all these books. It's very interesting. It's
yeah.
hilarious. He like references the movie back a bunch, but it's so good. But he
Yeah.
basically was just saying like you it gets difficult. I think the longer you go on in your business, you start to look at things as like, okay, what makes money and what doesn't, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or like what gets me to this result and what doesn't. And then you sort of
Mm-hmm.
start to pursue the things that, maybe make more money or get you more follows or something like that. And I think that's completely fine. Like it's fine to
Mm-hmm.
look at the data, but once you lose the way that it feels for you, that's where I think the tricky part comes in. And like I'll even
Yeah.
admit, like I definitely got into that headspace with the podcast, with like, halfway
Mm-hmm.
in, I was like, oh wow, okay, I'm getting these like big names.
Mm-hmm.
And after a while, I was like, okay, but what are the conversations that I want to have? Like I
Mm-hmm.
started this for a reason. And if I sort of mold to what everything else is out there, that's not going to be from a good intention for me. And that's not
Right.
aligned action. So aligned action is like, what are the conversations that I really want to have? So
Mm-hmm.
what other ways do you feel like people can start to take more aligned action? Like what questions can they start to ask themselves?
Well, I think the biggest question when it comes to taking aligned action is how much do you trust yourself? We see a lot in the spiritual community this idea of trusting the universe or trusting God or trusting, insert whatever religious or spiritual entity you want to put there. But I think any of that trust is ultimately a reflection of the trust you have in yourself. So, how much do you trust you to get you where you need to go? And when we're talking about anything like social media, or we're talking about money, or we're talking about followers, it's more of a reflection of your trust in yourself in what you're doing to say, I'm going to do what I feel is right and what I want to do. And I'm going to trust that my audience is going to respond and meet me where I'm at. And the money is going to respond and meet me where I'm at. And building that relationship. So I think the biggest place to start with that is that space of trust and journaling upon that and asking yourself, like, what can you do to create that trusting relationship with yourself? And for me, the best way I thought about it and the best way I approached it was I looked at the qualities and the elements that I needed from my friends, from my family, from my partner to be able to trust them. And I asked myself, okay, so these are the qualities I need. I wrote them out in my journal and then said, where am I not exhibiting these qualities in my own life? And it's so easy for me to come on here and say that, but it's so difficult to do this work. It's difficult to look yourself in the mirror and to say, I don't trust myself in this area because I've experienced significant trauma, or I'm really effing scared and I don't know how to do this, or I feel unsupported. But those are the kind of questions and revelations that will help you to build that trust and will help you to know exactly what is right for you. To give you an example from the social element, I had kind of this lesson in trust come up for me just about a week ago. Um, for years, as long as I've been sharing, I've loved doing trainings on Instagram stories. And over the past 6 months, I've really fallen in love with TikTok as like a new platform for sharing the same messages. And I had run a poll on my stories and was like, hey, are you guys more interested in seeing these trainings on TikToks and Reels or versus stories? And 60% said stories. And I sat with that and went, ooh, but I don't like talking on stories as much. I love it, but I'm having so much more fun with the process of creating reels and TikToks and getting my message out that way. So I honored what my audience said, but then ultimately decided I'm going to do what feels fun for me. And I love my audience and I'm going to trust them to meet me halfway, to meet me where I'm at, because I trust myself in the work that I'm creating more so when I share it in this format versus the other one. And I made the transition, and my audience has totally met me there. They're loving the content, they're engaging with it more. So, that I fully believe was a result of the fact that I had done the work on the trust within myself to feel fully confident in that decision, even if people were going to be upset with me. And that's like a whole other topic. But that's kind of where that level of trust can manifest.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it is so important because, as a solopreneur, as, a
Mhm.
small business owner, you always want to be asking your audience, like, what
Yeah.
do you want to see? What do you guys want? And I just think it always comes back to like, before you put out that survey and before you ask that question, just find out what the intention is. Like,
Yeah.
if the intention is that you're trying to get someone to tell you what to do next,
Hmm.
that might not be the best scenario. Like you might just need
Totally.
to sit and meditate and like feel out what you really want to do next as opposed to
Hmm.
having them tell you. And I think it's not much different than like picking up the phone or
Yeah.
scrolling on social when you're like sad or anxious or something,
Hmm.
right? You're like, okay, someone just tell me what to think next and what to look at next. And
For
I
sure.
do, I think it's incredibly important to just be like, no, I think I need to sit with this for a little bit and figure it out on my own intuition.
Yes, your intuition, your inner voice, inner being, whatever you want to call it, will always, always, always give you the best answer for you.
Yeah.
And I found that when you lean into that, it is better than any advice you will get from anyone. I don't care who's giving you the advice, your
Mhm.
inner being will always give you the best advice for you.
Yeah. What tips do you have for someone to strengthen their inner voice? Because I think
Mm.
like when I think of like manifestation, as a buzzword, I think
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of people being like, well, I want the beach house and I want the
Yeah.
perfect partner and I
Mm-hmm.
want this big, amazing job where I'm like on talk shows and whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think for a lot of people, that could feel so far off
Mm-hmm.
that it feels like a totally woo woo thing. So I
Yeah.
think first question is like, what do you recommend for people to start listening to their inner voice? And
Mm.
then second question is, let's say, no, let's do that
Okay.
first question first, and then we'll go into the second one.
Perfect. So, my first place to start, if you have not connected to your intuition or your inner voice before and you're like, how the heck do I do this? Get your butt on a meditation pillow and meditate. I don't care how you do it, whether you turn on a timer or music, whether you put on an app like Headspace, or I have meditations for free on Insight Timer, so you can look up those on the app. Like, whatever you need to do to meditate, it does not matter, but get your butt on a meditation cushion for at least 10 to 15 minutes a day. It is something that will strengthen every part of your spiritual connection and your physical connection to yourself in so many more ways than I can even explain. It is truly profound. So, first, recognizing that. Second, treat your relationship with your intuition like you would any other relationship with another person. Um, I've come to really view my connection with my intuition as almost like that inner best friend, that person who is always there cheering you on. And your inner voice will always be loving and kind and supportive. It's never going to be like that inner critic that gives you those negative thoughts. It's always going to come from that loving place. So understand that in order to receive those loving answers, you have to give it that love too. And it can look like, asking it questions, whether you write it out in your journal and then feel into the answer and just allow yourself to free write it out, or asking questions in a meditation and then listening in for the answer to come in your body. I think, however you approach it, give yourself patience, give yourself space, and know that it's okay if the answers don't come right away in the beginning. Um, Recently, at the end of 2021, I went through a 10-week inner voice certification training and really learned how to teach people how to get into their body and really receive these peaceful answers. And so when I work with my clients on these, we're sitting for 2 hours over Zoom. I'm guiding them into their bodies and asking them questions to their inner voice and then just allowing them to bring the answers forth. And I think I've noticed with people who are so new to this in the beginning, they can kind of get frustrated because we're letting 5 minutes pass and nothing has come up. And I just want to know or remind you that if that's happening to you, it's so okay. Give your inner voice that patience and that space. The more you work with it, it's like exercising a muscle. The easier it will become and the faster you can get answers from there. And finally, the third tip that I have is to remember to breathe. We forget to breathe so often, but one of the things that I was taught by my mentor is when we hold our breath, we hold ourselves in our mind. We hold a thought in our head. And she described it as like a bobblehead, where it's like the bobblehead is like stuck up, and we're stuck so in our head and we can't dive in and listen to our inner voice in our heart, our belly, wherever it is. So it's like in order to relax that bobblehead, in order for us to like go down into our body, we just have to breathe. So anytime that you are feeling overwhelmed, take that big inhale through your nose and let it go out your mouth. Get loud, get weird with it. And that will build and strengthen your connection to your intuition the more you can continue to breathe through the thoughts.
Oh, I love that so much. So let's go into like, well, I guess, okay. So the next question I had on that was
Yeah.
if someone is stuck, let's say, in
Mm-hmm.
a relationship or
Mm-hmm.
in a job, right, that they feel
Mm-hmm.
like it's like 80% of the way there, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not exactly what they want it to be yet. Like, and I know a lot of people, especially in our age demographic, that are
Yeah.
really like in these jobs that are really hard, but maybe it is in the industry that they want. What are your, but they're maybe like they're scared to let it go. Like maybe they know they could do better, but they're scared to let it go.
Mm-hmm.
What do you sort of recommend there? And I know I think these steps are
Mm-hmm.
very similar, but what would you
Yeah.
sort of like, what questions would you recommend people to sit with and maybe journal with and ask themselves?
Mm. Understand, first of all, understand what it is that you do desire. And if you don't have an idea of what it is and you're in a situation where you're like, I know I need something different, but I don't know what I want, make a list of all the things that you don't want. And that sounds very counterintuitive, but there's an Abraham Hicks quote that I really love that says, if you know what you don't want, you know what you do want. So the more you can identify what it is that you are not energetically available to and how you can set boundaries around those things, then what you do want becomes more and more clear. And if you're weighing out different options, I encourage you to take those options and like lean into your intuition and ask your inner voice, is this for me? And listen for that yes or that no. One activity that I had a client do was I had them take all their options and write them down on like sticky notes or little pieces of paper. And they took one and they held it to their heart and they breathed into it and asked inner voice, is this right for me? And they would hear a yes or a no. And they got all no's except for one yes. And they knew that was the direction to move in. So play with that, give it time, get clear on what you want or get clear on what you don't want, and allow the vision of what you want to actually come through. And then once you have that sense of what it is that you actually are desiring and you have that like kind of concrete vision, it becomes easier to take the action because you can see, okay, I can see myself going into the situation, I can see it coming for me, and it becomes easier to build that trust and take those aligned actions towards creating that thing so you have a safety net to let go of the current job or situation that you're currently in.
Oh, I love that so much. I am lists, I feel like are just my favorite thing in the world. Like I love
Yeah,
that recommendation. I think that's so good.
I love
um,
lists too.
so great. Okay, so we are recording this on the eve of the new moon in Aries. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I feel like I've seen a lot of just
Mm-hmm.
content that like this is an intense new moon. Can you tell us like what we should expect, what the best
Yeah.
things are to do right now to sort of like ground into this practice? I'm going to try as hard as I can to get this one out tomorrow morning so
Oh
that
my
people can
goodness.
listen to it in real
Yeah.
time. Um, so if you're listening to this on Friday, April 1st, know that I worked really hard. But can you tell us like what we should be doing to really make the most out of this new moon?
Yeah, so when we think of like the new year, we think of January 1st, but really the astrological new year begins with the beginning of Aries season because Aries is the first sign in the zodiac, Pisces is the last. So the astrological calendar begins with Aries season. And the new moon is typically a time of rebirth. It's a new chapter. It happens at the beginning of an astrological season. So I like to think of this new moon in Aries as really like our new year. So treat this as a time of we're starting a new cycle. We've closed out the past year. We're opening a new one. You know, we've got Jupiter moving into Aries soon, the planet of luck and abundance. We finally got some fire sign energy after having nearly a month and a half of no planets in fire signs, which is why you probably felt unmotivated or lethargic or tired at the beginning of the year. I know I did. So it's like we're finally starting to like pick up speed here. And so the new moon being this time of like rebirth, it's really a time to set new intentions. So I like to look at this new moon in Aries as like, what is the energy and the passion and the excitement you want to bring into this new year? You know, Aries is ruled by the planet Mars, which is all about passion and drive and ambition and assertiveness. So it's like, how can you become assertive in what you desire and say, no, this is not just something I want. This is something I am deciding. I am deciding that this is available for me. I am deciding that I am an energetic match for this. I'm deciding that I'm calling this in this next year, and set those tangible intentions, almost like you would a New Year's resolution, but in a more grounded and knowing way. You've had the past 3 months after setting your resolutions, if you do them, to say, okay, this is what I really want, this is what I don't want, these are new desires I have. Now's the time to put them into action and to wait for that aligned action to then come forth and hit the ground running with them.
I love that. Any specific meditations you feel like we should do?
It's a really good question. So maybe not a specific meditation, but I think one ritual that I love to do with the new moon in particular, but specifically with this new moon in Aries, is a burning ritual. And so what you do is you write down all of your desires on a piece of paper in the form of what I like to call gratitude statements. So instead of saying, I want a business that makes $100,000 a year, you would say, I am so grateful for my business that generates $100,000 in income per year. So you write them out in gratitude statements. It can be on one piece of paper or different ones. And then you take a kitchen pot, or you know, a cauldron if you have one, or whatever it is, and you go outside and you put the papers in there and you burn them, and you let them burn to ash. And then afterwards, I always like pour just a little bit of water on top to make sure the fire's fully out, and then I scatter the ashes into the earth. And so that's basically my way of saying, like, it is done, universe. I'm giving it up to you. I'm surrendering it to you. Thank you so much for this.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's other ways to do this, where you can do it with water by putting the paper like in the ocean or a lake, or flushing it down the toilet. You can bury it in the earth, playing it with like the earth element. But I think because Aries is such big fire energy, doing this kind of fire burning ritual can be so powerful during this time to really set those intentions and know that as you watch those flames come up, as you watch the paper disappear, you are not letting go of these dreams. Rather, you're just giving them up to the universe. You're surrendering them and saying, I trust in myself and I trust in the universe to bring these to me in its tangible form.
I love that so much. I think it's also like, just as I'm listening to you, I think the root of all of this always is just going to be like gratitude and love. And I think like the more that we can just tell people like to just be grateful and to find the things that you're grateful for, and to just like spread, you know, positive energy is just the absolute best thing. So I love that so much.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's what it all comes down to, because there's no day that's guaranteed. And I know we hear that a lot, but I think every single person, especially anyone who's listening to this, has at least 5 things that they can be grateful for. If they're listening to this, they have some piece of technology that allows them to communicate with other people, to listen to podcasts like these. That's something to be grateful for. They're alive another day. And the energy of gratitude is truly what makes this world a better place. And it's free and it's accessible to everyone.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Okay, so before we get into rapid fire questions,
Yeah.
if you could give anybody listening 3 tips to really set themselves in motion into living into like their highest self, what would they be?
The first one that I'm hearing is take the pressure off of yourself. There is nothing that you need to do, there's nothing that you have to do. There's only what do you want to do. And I heard this from a mentor once, what do you get to do today? And she has this method. Instead of writing her to-do list, she calls it her get to-do list. So what do I have the privilege of getting to do today because I'm alive another day in this body? Comes back to gratitude. The second thing that I'm hearing from my intuition is give yourself permission to be messy, and that is something that I struggle with a lot. That is not easy for me. But, allow yourself to pivot, allow yourself to make mistakes, make public mistakes, make people angry on the internet, by being yourself and not doing anything that's harming anyone. Speak your truth, even if it's controversial. Make art, do whatever you need to do, be in that messy energy and be unapologetic as F about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is really so liberating and comes back to that idea of trust. And whether we're talking about manifestation or the inner voice or astrology or any other spiritual tool, it all comes back down to that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third piece of advice that I'd love to give anyone who's listening to this is to just enjoy the unfolding, enjoy the process. As you mentioned earlier, so much of manifestation can be rooted in what can I get and what can I get, but enjoy the process of getting there and enjoy the giving too.
Mm-hmm.
When you receive that beautiful gift, how can you give something to others? One thing that I personally try to do that has really made a profound impact in my life, not only in the sense of gratitude, but also in the sense of manifestation and cultivating my spiritual connection, is, for example, every time that I have a large, paycheck come in or whatever it is, a large launch, I go and I take X amount of that money and I go buy meals for the homeless and I go buy things for people in need and give back to others. Enjoy the journey and know that part of that journey is allowing others to enjoy the process with you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to take a road trip in your car across the whole world by yourself. You want people to come with you. We all rise together. So enjoy all of the beautiful elements of getting to where you want to go. And once you get there, allow others to enjoy it with you.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I think my favorite quote is, what is it? It's something about when you have to build, it's like instead of building, that's okay. I'll figure it out. It's something about building a longer table instead of like
Yes.
a higher fence. I forget exactly how you say it.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So let's get into rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. What is the software that you can't run your business without?
Lightroom, for sure.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting. I love Lightroom. That's a good one though. No one's ever said that.
I used to be a photographer, so.
Oh, awesome. I was going to ask, your branding is amazing. Do you do it all yourself?
Mostly. I did have my branding redone just actually this past year, but I was very hands-on in the process and went in knowing exactly what I wanted. So yeah.
I love it. It's so beautiful.
Thank you.
What is the best business advice that you ever got?
Just jump off the cliff and go for it. You don't have to know the answers. You don't have to think about it. Just do it and figure it out later.
Mm-hmm. Love it. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
In my hometown of Santa Barbara.
I didn't know you were from Santa Barbara.
I am.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh. My sister lives in Santa Barbara. I spent all of last summer there. I love it.
It's so beautiful.
It really, I like explain it to people as actual heaven on earth. Like,
I know.
Something about it. It's just, I can't even explain it. It's just so beautiful and amazing.
And it's magical too.
100%. Okay. Advice that you would give your younger self.
Have more fun and enjoy being a kid.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah.
And then lastly, one lesson that you took from the pandemic that you want to keep with you.
Oh gosh. Okay. How do I want to word this? Grief is difficult, but it doesn't break you. It is a cycle of life that reflects to you the beauty that's already around you, and it brings you back into the present and allows you to enjoy it more.
I love that so much. Did you see the Andrew Garfield quote? He was on I think he was on Jimmy Fallon, and he had
Okay.
just lost his mom. And
Mm.
whoever I forget, whoever the talk show host was had asked him about it, and
Mm-hmm.
he started crying, and he was like, I just want to pause and I just want to say,
Mm.
like, it's okay that I'm crying, and I'm crying because I
Yeah.
loved her so much. And he said, what did he
Mm.
say? He said grief is just there because you just love someone so much and you didn't get to fully express how much you love them. But or
Yeah.
like he was like, it's an expression, it's another expression of love and another form of love.
Oh,
And it was just the sweetest thing because
it was beautiful.
he was so positive about it while he
Yeah.
was crying. And he was just like, it's totally okay. It just means we
Yeah.
love her. We still want to talk about
Oh,
her. And it was so amazing. So I
that
love
is
that.
beautiful. And I think I'd love to extend that too to different situations or chapters of your life and say that the reason you're grieving it is because it was so good and you loved it that
Mm-hmm.
much. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. Hannah, where can everybody find you? How can they work with you if they want to
Yes.
learn more?
Absolutely. So you can find me everywhere at the road to Hana. Hana is spelled like Hannah. That is a long story. So I am on Instagram, YouTube, my website, theroadtohana.com. TikTok is the road to Hana underscore because someone stole my username and pretended to be me.
Oh my
That is
God.
a long story, but I am still trying to get that back. But we're at the road to Hana underscore on TikTok. And yes, I have tons of different courses and DIY offerings, as well as one to one coaching, inner voice sessions, and astrology readings. So you can find all of the links on any of those platforms.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. This was so wonderful.
Yay.